All right, welcome to the 2024 FSU Athletics and Seminole Boosters Town Hall discussion. A little bit awkward talking into a camera versus a live audience with a whole bunch of people, but we look forward to sharing with everybody tonight. My name is Stephen Ponder with Seminole Boosters. We have with us our guest, Michael Alford, Director of Athletics for FSU. But before we go to Michael, I just wanted to talk about the purpose for tonight. It's really threefold for us. One is to thank you for your support. We could not do this without you. Two, we want to get under the tent with you as we travel around the country. A question we often get asked, and especially this year, people ask, do you all understand what's going on? And we just want you to know we're in this with you. We're as passionate about winning and FSU as you are. And two is just provide clarity on some questions that are out there around the stadium and some other things. So Michael, welcome, and if you want to give some remarks.
Yeah, appreciate it, Stephen, and thank you everyone for joining us this evening. I want to thank you all for your support, especially since I've been athletic director and some of the things we have been able to accomplish. Just last year, we had such a banner year, probably one of the best ever in the history of FSU athletics. We had 5 conference championships. Of course, soccer won a national championship. We had 6 coaches of the year, 2 national coaches of the year, and Coach Norvell and Coach Penske, 7 ACC players of the year, which set a record. We had the highest GPA in school history, while also being able to do a lot of facility enhancements that are just making our programs better. Softball, basketball, track and field, swimming, built a new dive tower. All of this we could not do without your support, your belief in our vision and what we're trying to do here at FSU and what we're pouring into our student athletes and their experience while they're here. So I just want to start off by saying thank you and looking forward to speaking with you some more tonight about everything that we have going on.
Thank you, Michael. As I mentioned, we got several things we're going to talk about. Obviously, the 2024 football season, we will get into that, I promise. The House case, which many people may not know about, but it's going to impact, across the country from an NIL landscape, the Doak Campbell Stadium renovation, as well as just athletics overall. But first, we got a couple of things I just wanted to mention. Obviously, we've got 2025 annual fund renewals and ticket applications that are going out, so be on the lookout. We've also received many questions already, so I'll be answering some of those along the way. But if you are on the phone and have a question, you can press 3, or you can use the chat function on the video to ask a question. But first of all, Michael, let's talk about athletics and how athletics operates from an overall revenue standpoint. Clearly, ticket sales, all the Seminole Booster contributions. We got several questions of people asking us, and when we get this a lot, that Seminole Booster supports all student athletes, all scholarships. It's not just one sport. So you can just touch on a little bit about the framework around the revenue profile of college athletics in Florida State specifically.
That's a great question because there is so many different levers, and we've been able to pull some different ones here in the last few years. But of course, the contributions, number one, they account for over 35% of our athletic budget comes directly from Seminole Boosters. It is so important that the contributions continue, the annual giving, the debt service, the coaches club, everything that we're able to do comes from Seminole Boosters, and it's right up there with our largest next to the media contract. And so that's the 2 major levers that we pull in order to fund our athletic program. Then you look at variables, what I call non-traditional, of course, ticket sales, but non-traditional concessions, merchandise, everything that goes within our making up our revenue streams. So it's important that we look at different ways in how we grow them. We just renegotiated our multimedia rights agreement and brought in a new vendor with Legends coming on board. We really looked at that because over the length of the term of the deal, it provides us more revenue and more opportunities to grow our revenues by going with that partner. And we're really excited about where they're going and what that's going to lead to us. But in order for us to compete at an elite level, which we all want to compete at an elite level, we need to continue to look at growing what we currently have and how do we enhance our current revenue streams, make the fan experience better, provide different opportunities for for our donors and our multimedia rights holders, our sponsors to partner with us, but also what else can we find out there? And we're currently looking. One of the reasons we're going to touch base on Doak later on, I believe, Stephen, but one of the things we're doing with Doak Campbell Renovation is making sure that we can use that facility more than 6-7 times a year with different events, different opportunities to come in and have different revenue streams, whether it's concerts, motocross, anything that you can imagine. We're going to be looking at utilizing that facility because not only does it help FSU, but it helps the community of bringing people to Tallahassee in order to enhance what we're trying to get accomplished in this community.
Absolutely. And you can see on the screen that we've got, it was on there about the total contribution. There it is on the total number of student athletes, where the money goes that people give. And you can see the average annual investment per student athlete, and that's all in for everything involved. So again, we use the phrase all the time, it takes a village. And that's what it does. As we go far and wide talking to people from South Bend last weekend, or Miami a couple of weeks ago, or Durham, there are passionate Noles everywhere. And part of this, obviously, for us is we want to, again, we're going to talk about 2024, but just the ability to get into the text chains of each and every person on this call, that they're with their, I talked to a guy the other day, and his tribe family is the name of his text group. We got to get wider with more and more boosters involved. So let's answer a question that we had previously. This is from Lonnie Martin. What specific things will be done to ensure that what was not working in 2024 in football won't be repeated moving forward? And Lonnie, I'll tell you, I promise you, we're going to answer that in a minute. Michael will answer that. So stay tuned on that answer. But let's switch gears a little bit and start talking about Doak Campbell Stadium and really just, kind of the purpose behind it. And so I just, kind of overlaying thoughts are, this is a very personal project. Our staff has talked to a lot of folks, many people on this call we've probably had visits with, but there's also people who disagree with the project that we have spoken to. So we do understand that it is a long time family centered, people enjoying the game together. So it's a personal project. Speaking of that, we are going very personal, booster by booster, to talk to each and every season ticket holder about seating options. We're not through that process yet, so some we have not been able to meet with yet, but we will. And it's intentional on our part to go at that pace rather than just send out a blanket, here's the seating map. So I would tell you not to believe everything you read on social media, but we can answer those questions in your individual meetings. We are continuing to hold those meetings, as I said, and we'll communicate seating options through the 2025 spring cycle of renewals, because again, you got to know what you're purchasing, and we're going to try to help you with that. Our staff is to answer any questions. We did do surveys pre and post. I spoke to a gentleman last week about the pre-survey, and we did ask people in that pre-survey about, would you be willing to pay more? Would you like some upgrades? And the obvious answer is yes, everybody wants upgrades, but in order to get those, obviously some things cost a little bit more. And then the last thing is for us to compete nationally, and we want to compete on the field and off the field. And so that's kind of where the Doak Campbell Stadium, the starting point is. So we've got some slides we want to walk through related to Doak Campbell and go through those. Michael, anything you want to add? There's the first one. This is the benchmarking of the donation requirements of what Doak Campbell Stadium looked like before we entered into this project. So this would be 2023. Of where we look like in comparison on yard line and data compared to other programs. So, Michael, any thoughts you want to add to this?
Well, what I'd like to touch base on is when we did the study with CSL and they do the studies across the entire country, and we sent out the survey and got the results. And Stephen, I know you're going to touch base a little bit on that later about the different amenities. But when you look at this slide in particular, for us, in order to compete amongst our peers, and we're not asking to go up there with Notre Dame and Nebraska and USC and where they are in this slide, but we are asking for to get more competitive with our peers. And in order to get more competitive with our peers, we need to look and provide different amenities that other institutions have already done, and then go out and provide those experiences for our fans. We lead the country, you've heard me say it before, in distance traveled. 60% of our fan base travels over 3.5 hours to get to Tallahassee and Leon County for a weekend game. So it's important that we have those fan experiences and amenities here for them because they're coming from pro venues. And we want to provide not the pro model, but look at what some of the amenities in those stadiums and arenas that we can provide here to have that experience. And when you compare us, love comparing us to our peers. And when you look at the model that the SEC has done, we're 13 million behind the average SEC school, a Mississippi State or someone along those lines, in what they're bringing in revenue wise out of their stadium. And in the average Big Ten school, we're 9 million behind in those venues. Those institutions have gone in and updated their stadiums over the last 15 years, 20 years, and have been able to capitalize on the different experiences and provided different fan experiences that have really enabled them to get their donors, get their season ticket holders, continually growing that ticket base. And that's something that we believe and know that Doak Campbell's going to allow us to do.
Yeah, and I referenced it earlier, like from a public relations standpoint, the pace at which we are going in the sales process, as I mentioned, it's personal, booster by booster. We have, obviously it's a slower process. So there are times when people will read stuff online and say, well, that's the new price. And so one of the questions I wanted to answer, Ann Tucker asked about, basically the pricing of the seats in the stadium in the future, and are we pricing people out? And the one thing that everybody hasn't seen is the full picture. And so I just, again, want to let everybody know we want to go full menu. We've got about 12 different seating options, different types and prices, but there will be seating opportunities for people that are commensurate with what they paid in 2023, obviously a different location, but not every price is what people heard initially. So I just tell you, as we go through this process, just go through the meeting with your booster rep, and get as much information as possible. And we want to answer those questions because we want to pack Doak Campbell Stadium just like you do. So next thing I just wanted to touch on is related to the get a lot of questions about this, Michael, as we go across the country, and so I'm sure you do, is with the conference update with the ACC, and really just some misnomers, quite frankly, about why we're doing what we're doing. And so I just wanted you to, if you could just talk a little bit about the conference and the lawsuit that's going on currently.
Well, yeah, I'll touch on it as much as I can. And, I can't get into too much specifics regarding the lawsuit. But when we set forth 3 years ago and you started looking at analytics of where the conference was going, then you started examining the different media agreements with our peers, conferences. You started looking at the different revenue streams that were pulling. And then you looked at what we had in our conference. And we also anticipated the House case. And luckily, it came in a little lower than what our consultants had advised us where it was going to end up. But I know we're getting into House a little later. But when we started looking at these revenue streams and looking at the media agreements and looking when people, not only were they getting $30 to $40 million more than our media agreement now, but they were also going to go back out to market once again before we were able to go out to market. So part of the question was when we started this and looking at not only the media agreements, but the House settlement, going, we've got a revenue problem. It's not a peer institution problem. It's a revenue problem. And bringing that to the conference and talking to the conference about we need to find solutions in order to compete. Florida State's a national brand. Florida State wants to compete at the highest level. There's not many institutions you can count on one hand that you have a program, an athletic program that competes at this elite level across the board. And that's something we're very proud of, from women's soccer to football to World Series participants in baseball to conference winning champions in volleyball, beach volleyball, our golf programs. We compete nationally and want to win championships. And that's something that makes all of us very proud. But we also compete academically and have a top 20 public institution in America. We have that opportunity to offer that. And going through this process with the conference, trying to find new revenue streams and just enlightening everyone that there's going to be a problem coming this year, and that's just going to compound over the years where we're going to have issues competing across the board. And that's always been our stance, especially is that I want to continue to fund our soccer program. Those young ladies deserve it. I want them to go compete for national championships. I want to fund our softball program to compete for national championships. But in order to do that, we needed to look at our revenue model within the conference. And that was basic, the discussion that we have had with them, which started a couple years, 2.5, 3 years ago, and gotten us to this point where we want to look at finding different revenue models in order for us to compete across the board at an elite level like we do and attract the very best student athletes in the country.
So, Michael, on the screen right now, if we can back up on that screen, it shows some peer comparisons with what we would look like if we were in other leagues and where we look like in the ACC. So, you want to expand on that a little bit?
Yes, this is some of the information I've provided the conference through our consultants, and we've got the very best out there, but in Navigate. But this is where it shows you our brand value, and it's also measurable over years. So you see our brand value within the ACC, and that's measuring everything from, you might have heard me every once in a while talk or put on X our viewership ratings. But this measures a lot of different things, but mostly our viewership ratings of what we bring to the conference. So you see, we lead the ACC. We would be third in the Big Ten and very competitive in the SEC in what our brand value brings. There's nothing better than I love than looking at a big game, coming back and looking at what the viewership was in LA, looking at the major markets across the country, because not only do we deliver Florida, and I don't think we have a slide on this, but in head-to-head competitions with common opponents, we actually have a better brand value than our counterparts in the middle of the state. And it's something that we take a lot of pride that we own the state of Florida when it comes to our brand and the attention our brand receives when we play nationally and we play opponents from outside our region. There's a lot of interest. So it's very important that we continue to drive that narrative. It's also very important that we go out, as Stephen mentioned earlier, and have that brand and opportunities in those major markets where we have so many alumni everywhere in New York and elsewhere that we go and communicate with them and continue to grow the brand and get them to partner with us. And
That's
this
great.
slide right here, I wanted to point it out, that last slide. If you look, it predicts we average 20% better viewership compared to our counterpart in the state when we play the same opponents on the same TV channel. And that will give you a little comparison of some of those matchups that we've had in relations to the Oklahomas and the Texas and the Ohio States, and that's who we consider our peers.
Yeah, and I think one thing you and I've talked about is the number of national primetime games we've played this year. Obviously, we're going to talk about 2024, but it just goes to the power of the brand, regardless of what we're doing. People want us on TV, so it just speaks to the brand. So I think that's true. So the next thing is let's jump into the house case, and then we're going to talk about 2024. But if you want to give just a brief overview of the house case, but before you do it, Michael, I wanted to answer one question. Robert Salah asked about NIL and how NIL works, and he's got three parts to the question. How does FSU rank compared to other institutions regarding NIL? How does the process work, and is it more than just football, basically? So to answer those from this is we rank very competitively nationally in the NIL landscape. And I actually had somebody this past weekend ask me if we took NIL money and put it into the stadium project and didn't basically participate, and that's what's causing our issues for this season. And of course, that's not the case. That's we are competitive in that landscape. But NIL, as it's existed in the past, multiple sports have been involved in it. It's not just football, but it's a lot of sports that have been involved in it. But let's talk a little bit about where it's going in the future, because a lot of people I talk to, they talk about the way I grew up, and you and I both grew up in college athletics. It's changed, and the world's changing every day. But this new House settlement, I think, will kind of settle it back out a little bit to a new normal. that I think people can be like, okay, at least there's a cap. So why don't you explain that a little bit for everybody?
We got about 2 hours.
No, you don't have that long, but you got a couple minutes.
I do agree with Stephen, and we're going to talk very high level on the house, but we've been very involved in it and have been following this, tracking this for numerous years and preparing ourselves. Just this week, as in tomorrow, I'll be meeting with the Cowboys to talk about how they do their cap and contracts and some of the language within those agreements that we will see into the future. So basically, what the House settlement did was take your media value, your media revenues amongst the conferences, took an average, because when Fox or an ESPN or someone comes in and and negotiates a media contract, let's say, they're typically going to be 85% football, 15% basketball. So, and then other sports. But that's typically the criteria when they start their negotiation. So that's why you see a lot of push in growing our football brands, especially within this conference, and you see other conference what they've done. So when that went to court with Judge Wilkin in the Ninth Circuit, what she had relayed was 75% of the media value for football and 25% other sports. So that is the model moving forward. So when you project that coming out, and they do the average of the media contracts, and there's a growth, and it gets a little complicated, but it comes out to be a cap per school of $20,500,000. So in the future, and you do not have to do $20,500,000, but we want to compete, and we want all of our sports to compete on an elite level. So we will be paying our student athletes $20,500,000 and dividing that up following the court case of how it should be distributed. That can come in many forms. It could come in scholarships, which we have an advantage. So 2.5 million of that can go into increasing scholarships. So not to bore you, but there's no more scholarship limit. There's a roster limit. So we've changed it in collegiate athletics a little bit. But we're going to be able to provide more scholarships across the board to all of our sports because of the affordability of going to Florida State compared to the affordability of going to some of our peer institutions. So our state legislators really set us up for this to have some success. So we're going to be able to provide more full scholarship opportunities to young men and women, especially in our so-called Olympic sports, that's going to keep them debt-free when they graduate. They're going to now, instead of being here on a partial scholarship, we're going to be able to provide them for a full scholarship. And that's something we're really excited about. And working with our coaches and what those are going to be is something that our student athletes we had signing day to day, a lot of those commitments are now being able to, instead of being on a 25, 30% scholarship, they're on a full ride throughout their time here at FSU, which will allow them then to leave debt free. So that's a good thing. There's also going to be a form of payment to athletes based on your media value. And that's going to be a negotiation that we're going to be having with our student athletes coming in. You're going to sign them on a 3-year agreement. They'll sign a grant and aid, but there will also be a media value agreement associated with that negotiation, much like you see in the pros. Contracts very similar. I will tell you the 4 and so conferences, I only deal with the ACC, but we have a template that we're all going to be utilizing. Now we can put due to Florida law and some other things that we're going to add into that template, but we're going to start that this December of sitting down with our student athletes and moving forward with that. That basically takes your NIL in-house into that cap, and everybody is subject to the cap. The NCAA will no longer be enforcing the cap. We're setting up a very strict enforcement agency that if you go over your cap, there will be penalties. So I'm getting way down the road, but yes, that is something that is being set up. So we are looking at with our business office and modeling what our cap's going to be and how we're going to manage our cap. We're going to manage our cap multi-years. So a lot of that is changing the face of collegiate athletics. And as Stephen pointed out, for the better. It's going to take away the so-called pay for play. It's going to put everyone on an equal playing field where you can participate at that cap level that you want to participate. So now it's basically comes back NFL experience that I have to talent evaluation. Everybody's going to be on a level playing field. It's going to come back to how you evaluate your talent, how you develop your talent moving forward. So it's something that's really excited. It's going to be great for the student athletes moving forward, and it's going to be a great partnership that we have here with the house. Your old NIL company, the Battles In, is becoming a marketing agency. So they will be able to go out and, let's say Patrick Payton had a national Powerade commercial this year. They would go out and negotiate that marketing agreement with Patrick and Powerade. And then that would run through a clearinghouse to make sure that it's not a pay for play anymore, that is getting measured fair market value. And so that agreement would get measured, and they would come back and say that agreement is worth this value. So therefore, that value would be assigned to that, and Patrick could go out and perform that commercial on a national scale like he did. So we're going to operate much like the NFL, and really excited about that. Of course, having 10 plus years in the league, and we have several people here with NFL experience as well on our staff. It's really going to clean up where we've been in this Wild West atmosphere we've had the last few years, and I think for the betterment of the student athlete as well.
Yeah, thank you, Michael, for that. I think a couple of things I'd like to mention. We had a question from about the NIL and the Battles End, and can people still contribute to the Battles End? Can companies still be involved like they've been? And the answer is yes, and we'll have information about that. But like you said, there is a cap, and there's true NIL, and there's not going to be this synthetic NIL like that used to be. One thing I would like to say, because I hear a lot of rumors, as you would imagine, people we call and ask, but I would tell you not to believe everything you hear about what certain players are getting paid, because I would tell you most of the time it's not close, and it just fuels a lot of speculation. So I think, back to Michael's point, as we're moving this forward in the future, it's going in-house to athletics, and it'll be handled, I think across the board a little bit different. So next thing, Michael, let's get to 2024, where we are right now. I think that you and I, as we've talked about it in the past, nobody is happy by any stretch of the imagination where we are. The standard here, and you talk about it all the time about what you expect in FSU athletics. What do you want to talk about relative to the 2024 season?
Well, like you mentioned, none of us, one, anticipated, two, are very happy about where we are, but we are where we are. So more importantly, what are we doing to address it? I can tell you that Coach Norvell and I speak weekly. You've heard me numerous years talk about the daily communication that we have, the shared vision, the partnership that we have. And I would take that with President McCullough and our Board of Trustees and our Chairman, Peter Collins, and your Chairman, Warner Peacock, and the boosters. It is truly a partnership amongst all of us, and a shared vision of what we need to do to be successful. We all want Florida State to be the very best, to compete for national championships. And, Mike and I have very, as I've mentioned, comfortable, candid relationships. There's a mutual respect for one another. He understands my role. Of course, I understand his role. We have a shared vision, and we're gonna work together to get this corrected. How we got here, there's a lot of different factors that we won't get into, whether it's injuries. You can point to a lot of different things of but regardless of that, we should be better. We should not be in this situation. And we've shared a lot of our respective experiences from being at places or different programs where you had a year like this, and what it takes to get out and to get better. And that's going to help me in assisting him, and he's found it very useful as well. But the strength of our relationship and our collective commitment can't be more steadfast on what we're going to do to fix this. And I can tell you that, I think I mentioned it in an article, this hurts him a lot. It wears on him, and And but the energy that what I've been so impressed about, his energy has not wavered. And you go to practice, and the energy of the young men associated with the program and their effort has not changed during practice. And they want to continue to get better, and really looking forward to continuing this season on a strong note. Let's end it on a strong note, fix it in the off season, and get ready for a very successful 2025.
Yeah. So, Michael, just a couple of questions because I read the article that you did. One of the questions that we had that came in was about timing, and and I don't know, obviously we're dealing with people. Everybody involved is a human, so we all want to be sensitive to that. But just from a timing standpoint, relative to the decisions that were made last weekend, and then as we get towards the end of the season, just the timing of what's happened to this point in terms of trying to uh, you know to get ready for 2025, and then the hiring process at the end of the season. What does that look like from your perspective?
Well, the timing of the situation is constant evaluation, constant assessment, and we meet every Sunday after games. Coach and I do, and just go through that week, go through the future, try to project where we're going to have to make some decisions, and really put that into a timeline, and also making sure too that we were doing the right thing by the student athlete. And that is the number one criteria that he and I use. What is best for those young men at this moment? Forget everybody else. What is best for those young men, and what do we feel is best for them? Not only prepare them to go out and compete at their highest level, but also emotionally. What are we doing to make sure that they're in a good spot, that we are taking care of them at that time? And every decision is the core of any decision is the student athlete in mind, and that's something that he and I take to heart. Being former student athletes and having children who were student athletes, that's the kind of support you want wherever they go, and we really use that as our core decision making process is with the student athlete in mind. So moving forward, we're looking forward to next year. We're looking forward to finishing out these two games. Like I mentioned, we got a great homecoming game, and then Doak's going to be rocking for Florida, and we can't wait to finish this season out strong, and then get ready for 2025.
Yeah, I would say, Michael, that for everyone listening, and I
Well,
think, and I
you
say this.
mentioned future coaches, Stephen, and I apologize. I
No,
didn't.
no,
I
it's okay.
didn't. The search process has already started, and really, the names I can't give them, of course. Let me say the interest that of people reaching out to us has been overwhelming, and you would recognize a lot of the names, and because of that, it shows the belief in Coach Norvell. And the people that have reached out to me or others, I mean, they know this program's going to be back. I've talked to numerous coaches, head coaches across the country, talked to administrators, I've talked to commissioners. I mean, everyone says you're going to be right back. And that's our anticipation. But the amount of interest to be a part of this program and a part of this university and community has been overwhelming, and especially by the type of people and the resumes that they bring with them to be a part of this program. It speaks to the tradition of Florida State. It speaks to what our donor base has been able to build here throughout the years. And it makes us really excited for the future and some of the changes we're anticipating making moving forward.
Yeah, I would say that the one of the overall themes that, and again, I may have mentioned it in part when I opened up, but that people just want to know that Mike Norvell, like that y'all feel like everybody else feels, and they're ready to run through a wall to fix this, right? And so
Well,
I think that's where, as you have conversations with Coach Norvell, I mean, do you feel that, kind of explain that passion that you see every day from him?
yes. Yeah, I mean, this is very personal to him. And I mentioned what makes him such a great leader is how personal it is. And there's nothing more to see behind the scenes. And we go back to coming out of the COVID year and his second year. And I remember getting the question about making a change then. And I'm like, it was crazy to me because I saw the passion, but you see the relationships. You see the care for the young men behind closed doors. You see the response of the young men. You see their commitment. You see the discussions even I have with our student athletes uh, about their willingness to, and how painful this is to them, but their willingness to get this turned around and get it turned around quickly. I mean, it is a unified approach. None of us wanted to be here, but I can tell you that with Coach Norvell, what makes him such a great coach, what makes him the national coach of the year last year, what makes you see the people in the pros reaching out to him. You see the numerous head coaches reaching out to him, offering encouragement, especially going through this time in this year. It makes us excited about the future because I know the man we have. I know the man that is leading this program. I know the care he has for our student athletes. And I know what one hell of a football coach he is on top of it. So we're going to be getting this program back steered in the right way, and it's going to happen very quickly.
That's great. I would say that, the second question I think we get overall, look, and we kind of laid this out in this talk about ticket sales, boosters, everything else, but the engine behind the entire operation is football. And
Yes.
so it is vital that Florida State football be successful. And, my take from watching it from afar and now up close is Florida State football is a blue blood. And, with 3 national championships and where we've been, it's important to us. People on the calls have invested a lot in this program. We're investing a lot in this program and the projects that we have going on. And so I just want everybody to know that this is a by the minute thing that we are all working on Florida State football being back to where everybody on the call wants it to be. So, Michael, I'm going to move on to something else, but anything you want to finish from 2024?
Well, I want to add that you mentioned about being prepared for the future. And I think we are so prepared for the future because of what we're doing facility wise with the cap. And we talked about a little bit earlier about the cap. Well, that's going to put everybody on a level playing field. And I was having a discussion with a head coach in another institution today, but now that's going to become the norm in a year is what the cap and what that payment is. What it's going to come back to is what we anticipated years ago, Stephen, when you and I were talking and we were drawing everything out. It's going to come back to facilities and it's going to come back to culture and your head coach. And we're building the nicest facility that you can have for a student athlete in our football only complex. We just did millions in softball. We're doing things in soccer. We're looking at baseball, beach volleyball, all because of y'all support. But we're looking at building the very best facilities for all of our sports that you could possibly build. We're looking at what Doak Campbell brings. So the timing of our football facility and Doak Campbell coming online is going to make a difference. And one of the things I would love to point out is when we first got here and we're looking and doing comparisons, we were one of the lowest in our conference in football facility space. And we were about mid to lower tier in space dedicated for football. Well, this facility is going to change this. It's going to get us in the top 3 of the conference, top 2 in the conference, and it's going to allow us to recruit at a different pace. The stadium, Doak, when student athletes come in and see a modernized stadium and the amenities that it provides for them, it's going to allow us to recruit at a place where Florida State's accustomed to recruiting. So we're really excited about the changes. I think the timing for Florida State couldn't be any better because of the vision that coach, myself, the board of trustees, the president, the booster, everybody had a collective vision and a timing of when the house case, everything was going to hit, that we were going to come out of this in a better place because of some of the investments we were making at that time. And we couldn't do it without the support of our boosters.
Absolutely. I think here's some of that information you were
This,
talking about, Michael.
yes, this is a great slide in a study that we didn't conduct, the conference conducted. So you look at investment in football from 2012 to 2022, Don't know the other schools. I can anticipate what the other schools are. And you had to identify yourself as a football or a men's basketball primary school. Where you see the average investment, and we would be in the garnet over there on the far left, in those 10 years, the percentage of investment that we made into football compared to our peers over that 10-year span within the ACC. We're not talking about the other conferences. We're talking just within the current conference of the ACC, and that was our investment into football. So we needed to relook at how we were investing to provide those winning edge resources so that we can compete at the highest level.
Yeah, I think that's a great slide, and I want to thank. In a second, we had Calvin Brothers renewed his booster membership today, and he put that online. Just want to thank him for doing that. But Michael, we got a question in here from Michael in Plain City. He was asking about naming rights and
Yeah.
if we're considering everything. And from my seat, I would tell you we're considering everything. But you want to address that question?
Yeah, that is something that we are looking at continuously, looking at what we can do to pull. You heard me earlier say those revenue levers. That is a revenue lever that we are looking to possibly pull and having discussions across the board with campus and elsewhere about the proper way to go about it. So, as Stephen pointed out, it's definitely everything's on the table, and we will continue those discussions to move forward if the right opportunity presents itself. I wanted to point out too about the football facility here on this slide. It was looking at the space. So you see we were sixth out of 14 at the time when we conducted this study in space dedicated to football, well below the ACC average space.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think our football facility will rival the one that was on the far right to
Yes,
be in the top of the league in terms of space as we move forward. So,
it
so
will
looking at
rival.
that,
Stephen, it will rival any facility in the country.
yeah,
Florida State is the very best, and we want to provide those resources to our student athletes, not only athletically, but the academics facility in there as well will allow them to continue to set records academically as a football program.
yeah, and the Dunlap football facility. One of the main drivers behind the funding of that is our Bowden Society, launched 2 years ago, and the purpose behind that is just the athletic director's next greatest need in terms of or priority. And right now, that's the Dunlap Football Center, which is scheduled to open in September. So, but as we look forward to 2025, I know that everybody on the call is like, "Hey, 2024." Everybody's frustrated, and that's an understatement. We are as well, from a standpoint of just what we know, the passion behind this program. But as we look forward to 2025, and you kind of touched on it, the Dunlap Football Center will come online in September 1. Doak Campbell Stadium is online to be ready for our opening game against Alabama in August. We have a new NIL structure, which I think is a very, very positive thing, and a renewed energy around our football program. And in many ways, it feels like, hey, we're taking a program, and you showed it there. There were some years there where we just weren't investing in football like we were. But what we are now and what we're setting up for the future, this is not a short-term play for us in terms of all that we're investing. We want Florida State football to be at the top on a perennial basis. And I just think you want to talk about that from a vision standpoint, where you see Florida State football in the future.
Yeah, that's a great point, Stephen, and especially when it comes to success initiatives that the conference has. With us to get more revenue streams coming from our conference, we all put in to get to a long story, but you got to have success. It is football, basketball driven. So to us to grow our revenue, we have to have success in those sports. To have success in those sports, men's and women's men's basketball, and football. We have to invest in those sports and continue to invest in our others. But to grow the revenue streams from the conference media agreement, we need to invest and have success in those sports. So those three are very important for us to have
Yeah.
success. I've shared this with the coaches. But moving forward, we're really excited about the future. We got Alabama coming here, but we need to continue to drive different and find different revenue streams as we continue down this journey. Our TV media contract and currently it is what it is. So we're constantly looking to find different revenue streams so we can compete with our peers across the country, because that's what we expect. I talked a little bit about it earlier. All of our sports compete at a national level. It's something we're very proud about, something you should be very proud about, because I can tell you that's not the case for all schools. All
Yeah.
schools pick and choose what they want to be successful. They fund those sports to be successful, and the others they fund just to compete. We don't fund any sport here just to compete. We fund our sports at a championship level. And you see that by the success of men's golf, women's golf, the championships we've won last year. I mean, you look at that across the board, and it just means something different to be a Seminole, to come to Florida State, no matter what sport you're playing, because you're going to have a chance to compete at a national level. I'm super excited about adding lacrosse and Sarah Tisdale, who's now our head coach. We're entering the hardest, most competitive lacrosse league in the country, and we're excited. We're going full in to compete. We're not going in not to compete. We're in the so-called Premier League of women's soccer. We just won our fifth straight ACC championship, which is amazing. We fund our programs to compete at the highest level. Our expectations are to compete at the highest level. We're not happy when we don't. We will look at every program, what adjustments we need to make, what do we need to do, provide, what resources to provide to win at that highest level and to provide that best student athlete experience. So that's something that we're looking at in the future. We're going to need your support. We're going to need you, whether it's $70 to join at any level or be a Gold Chief. We would prefer platinum, but to be a Golden Chief. That's the support that we're going to need to fund and provide these student athletes the greatest experience of their lives.
That's awesome. One thing, Michael, that we, as we've talked about, and again, we get feedback from a lot of people through emails, texts, and just conversations around the state. But obviously, the timing of everything as we make changes. I was having a conversation in Jacksonville on Monday with a gentleman about, man, the whatever change that we were talking about, whether it was per seat per sport, or it was some other change that we were doing, that the timing wasn't great. And the runway as we make decisions aren't based on what happens in a weekend. They're planned out 9 months to years in advance. And so I just wanted everybody to know that, like, when we make changes and those type things, we can't be dependent upon what's happening necessarily weekend to weekend. Emotionally, we're invested in that, but from a business perspective, we didn't obviously anticipate and expect the timing to be what it is. But regardless, I will speak to the Seminole Boosters staff, and what we've talked about since we came back from Ireland was that we lean in and talk to more people. And that's really what tonight, as I mentioned, is to get everybody under the tent. Everybody matters in terms of what they give, their involvement, their participation, whether they're in Doak Campbell Stadium or they're in Portland, Oregon, pulling for us, and they're in Iron Arrow in Portland. It all matters. And so I just wanted to thank everybody for what you do. If you have questions, please reach out to us. And as Michael mentioned, we want, again, thank you for being a Seminole Booster member, but we know the ultimate strength of Florida State is our size. We've got boosters and Noles everywhere. And we just ask everybody to ask your friends to join, because that's going to be the difference maker for us. And we just want again, thank you, and ask your friends, neighbors, and relatives to join, because it does take a village, and it's a whole lot more fun when we do it together. So, Michael, any final comments from you?
Yeah, and I'm going to jump on that too, Stephen. It's the fact that we have more alumni than any school in the ACC by more than 50,000. But yet, in number of donors, and correct me if my figures are wrong, Stephen, we rank about fifth or sixth in the league in number of donors, but yet we have the largest alumni base. So with Stephen's point, if you know a friend or someone who went to school or just a fan, we have a lot of donors who did not attend Florida State, but love the brand and love what we're doing and love our coaching staff and our student athletes that join the boosters. So if you do know of someone, please just ask them to join at any level. Support our student athletes, buy tickets, any little bit goes to make a difference in the service and the experience we can provide our student athletes.
Absolutely. Well, thank you, Michael. And I thank everybody for joining tonight. And again, if our staff can do anything for you, just reach out, SeminoleBoosters.com. You can get in touch with anybody on our staff, and we look forward to furthering the relationship that we have with you already. I appreciate everybody's time tonight. And Michael, thank you very much. And go Noles.